Starting off a little bit earlier today. This time it's 7:15 instead of around 9. I'm getting better. I'm really looking forward to today's group of evaluations that I'm about to undertake because there are so many names in them of people who have. There are at least 3 people who have been in the group for a long time and who've contributed so much in terms of feedback, educational content, and have started their own channels and really have been key to the personality of the group. So and there are a couple of people who joined recently who are also just kind of becoming really key members, and people whose thoughts and advice and perspectives I value. So and it's great that they are all participating in this challenge and supporting the channel too directly. So that's pretty amazing. And this score here is definitely from a participant that belongs to the former category. J.J., it's great to have another score from you, and you just keep getting better and better. And that's been true of several people who have been with this. Pretty much, I would say everybody who's been with this long term has gotten really so much better than when they started. And that is not to say that when they started they didn't already have a strong sense of craft, But in this case, we're really seeing a lot of very professional, very well-crafted passages. So, this is just about ready to go to the stands. So let's see if there's anything that I can do to help it get even stronger. Okay? So, starting off here from the beginning, just very simple, very delicate scoring. So I would say here that if you really want a blend here of clarinet and violins, then you should not score the clarinets louder than the violins, right? I think they can all be piano, right? There's nothing about this that really requires that the clarinets be mezzo piano. In fact, that you probably get a better sound from them if they're just piano. Consider the possibility that when Lili assigned hairpins underneath the melody, that she actually really intended the melody to be what surges rather than the accompaniment, right? Because the only note that is really different is just one single note, like the pianist is holding a chord, right? And they change one single note in the harmony, right? And the rest of the chord cannot crescendo in that context, so that note had probably better not crescendo, right? So in that context, you don't really need the accompaniment to surge when you adapt it to an orchestral work, right? Bum, right? I mean, do we really need that? Do we just need the melody to go da 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 da? Here, I would say you don't really need to mark LV on your harp because that's just a given. The harpist is not going to stop the tone every single time, right? And in this particular, you just have to be careful with Sibelius, right? If this, it's like right here we're seeing the grayscale, right? So look how I'm just gonna blow this up for a second. So look how J.J. has gotten around the incapacity of Note Performer and other sound sets to actually score harp the way that it needs to be scored in terms of harmonics, right? You should always indicate the note to be played. So if this, I'm certain that if I were to open up the information on this note, it would show that that it has been turned off, right? And this grayscale, which would be invisible in the final score, has been turned on, right? So that's a great way to get around the whole quandary of the notes as scored, right? Should being the wrong ones. Just to explain a little bit more what I'm talking about, and that is that Note Performer and Sibelius sounds, and pretty much every sound set that's ever been used for Sibelius in a large way. I think Garritan too at the time when they were trying that out. The note that is sounding is indicated in harmonics, which is actually wrong. The harpists prefer to pluck the string that is going to sound the harmonic an octave higher, right? So that was a really great workaround, really nice. Okay, so not sure what the pedal does for harp, but anyhow, yeah, and here you do not really have to mark like pedal damping signs, right? That's really for the harpist. It's kind of like bowing marks, right? That's something that the string players would really prefer to do themselves. I mean, this is pretty sensible, and there may even be, if there's a real need to exaggerate a crescendo, the player may well decide to go with an up bow going into the bar. Okay, but I just say leave that to them. Okay, here you're showing me that you are aware of that, but I wouldn't put it in the score. I wouldn't put it in the final score. And the same thing with these damping marks, right? And in the context of the sustain of the harmony and just the limpidness, and the lucidity and the of all of this beautiful scoring, whether or not the harpist damps this is completely of no matter. Excuse me, merit is completely of no matter. It will not make any difference if they do or they don't, right? Just because of the way this is all written, and because you do not have the harp scored as a as a solo instrument. So, in the end, it doesn't quite matter. Now, just in general, looking at the way that everything is scored, there is a little bit of what looks like my bugaboo of dynamic mixing, but in truth, J.J. has actually been paying attention to some of my admonishments, and it is really just the winds and the strings are pretty much playing the same dynamics, and the horns here are just a little under, right? They are not, or actually they're quite a bit under. Only going up to mezzo piano instead of forte. So that is just a really beautiful, warm kind of a pad. However, I strongly approve of the harp being marked up higher than the strings and winds, right? So this could easily be like mezzo piano or even mezzo forte, crescendo to fortissimo, really, if you want that to come through. And then back down to, say, mezzo piano. Now, as far as the celesta is concerned, the evaluation just before this one, in the order that I'm releasing them, by Gordon Dell, has a kind of a film score, modern score kind of perspective of like not even marking anything, like any dynamics on the celesta, kind of out of the understanding that they have an extremely narrow, like celesta has an extremely narrow dynamic contour. So, attempting to play extremely soft on the celesta doesn't necessarily give you anything that is all that much softer than trying to play extremely loud on the celesta, right? So what is mezzo piano to forte for celesta would be, in the actual terms of the orchestra, would actually sound, in orchestral dynamics, would be more kind of like, say, piano to mezzo piano, right? It's just really, it's difficult to get an incredibly soft sound out of it, and I think there are like felt dampers or something like that, but that is an actual change of sound. I'm not sure about that. Don't quote me on that. I think I've seen some celestas that have some kind of damping mechanism. I might be wrong about this, but then then like how loud can a celesta play, mezzo piano, right? So this is going to come through, and then right in here, it'll just get right absorbed right into the timbre of everything else that's going on. And then as you come out of it, it'll be fine, right? Okay, so we have a nice little flurry going up here on the piccolo. Okay, so just one is all you need. Now on the next page, you do another one, and I think that's a tautology, as they would say in the Romantic period, right? So it's like you already said it, you don't need to say it again, right? Because you already have not only do you have this flurry, you've got these flurries here, and and this little bird song and so on. So I would say let's not overdo it, right? You made your point at the beginning, rising up to the 5, right? So let's not do it twice. Just let's be economical with our, with our gestures. Like as I said before, like doing a beautiful run that goes up to the 5 or up to the leading tone or other kinds of strategies. You are like pointing at something, right? You're saying, "Hey, look over there," right? With the music. So, just try to keep those moments to places where they almost unnoticeably serve the music's purpose, as opposed to just like something that's like everybody is just always being told where to look, right? Think of the documentaries from like the not the Discovery Channel, but like the History Channel, right? Like some of the worst, right? Where they just really overproduce everything. Every time the camera pans, there's like a whoosh sound, right? So if you add too many things like this, then it is kind of like the camera panning and going whoosh, with the sound design, right? Okay. So everything else about this is fine. I really love the way that the oboes carry the melody onwards, and then the flutes, and I like the way that they are all A2, right? And I like the way that the clarinets evolve into a harmonic role along with the English horn. There is very little wasted in here. It is lush and light at the same time. And I notice you sort of drop out in here, right? And then you just bring in the violas and cellos later on after the horns have crept in, and I think that works really nicely. Okay, you don't really feel a big gap in the harmony here. It's interesting how you you have like a row of different dynamic markings here. You might get the same thing if you just stayed with pianissimo and just put like a tenuto mark or an accent mark on this one, right? And just kept it. So all you need is just one sign and then just accent or tenuto, right? Now, in this case, you're actually keeping the basses pretty high, going up to F sharp, and that's fine. I don't know why this is red scale in Sibelius. It certainly is a pretty standard note. I think there's the light red scale is or bright red scale is for notes out of range of like amateurs, and then the dark red is for notes that are completely out of range. But I would say, even for, I mean, I've worked with so many community orchestras and so on, and that note is totally possible. I think they're being a little too cautious. I would say notes up to G, right? Like G should be your standard limit. There's like no need to go above that G unless you are really writing something, quite unusual, quite striking for your double basses. Okay, so that's all good. I really love this. Let's go on to the development. So solo English horn, you could just do like regular small letters instead of caps there. So solo, da 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 dum, and it's really kind of an interesting audio illusion, isn't it? That the English horn sounds almost like a flute there with the sound sets, and actually, higher emotional English horn solo playing as accompanied by winds in this way might very well end up with a somewhat flute sounding. Because this is going over the lower and middle range of the flute, right? Sounding down a fifth, right? So it might actually give that kind of slightly crossed over sound. And, especially with all the rest of the winds to kind of back it up there. But it's way better to have English horn there than it is to have flute there, because it'll be much easier to hear. And then this is all really nice. Da 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 dum. I really appreciate that you left the melody in there, right, and didn't just immediately go to the harmony note in all parts. Okay, that's great. And then ba da dum da da dum. There's like no support from the strings at all, except for a little pizzicato here, and then tuba, right? Just so long as you keep this soft. Okay, I don't know how much you need to go up to mezzo forte there. In your English horn, but you know what? Just leave it. It's fine. Now, here, I think, like, you had the notion that you wanted the string sound to sort of creep in, but that's not an issue, right? Because the weight of the winds is so pungent right here that it doesn't matter whether or not it starts with mezzo piano or pianissimo. You're not really going to notice the strings until right around here anyway, right? So I think that's a little unnecessary in terms of finesse. Okay, and now notice yet another way to interpret mezzo staccato. Okay, so this is similar to a tenuto staccato, right? Short notes that each have the full value. So, unga, unga, unga. So they really will have a similar sound to tenuto staccato. It might be just a slight difference. Instead of kind of like having the unga kind of like bounce, sort of that it'll you won't quite feel the same kind of bounciness that the tenuto staccato has, but it'll be really, really close. So dun 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 dun, and this is kind of interesting, the way that you are bridging this one element of the harmony over to the trombones as a tied note. Very cool. Just very conscious of the way that the hand are working in the piano part. That's great. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and then I'm not really sure that you need the bass trombone to double up with the tuba right in here. I think bassoon would be a better partner right in here in terms of keeping it delicate. Yeah, it's just a matter of like what color do you want behind the timpani right here, because the timpani is really what you're gonna hear. This boom boom, and you've already got pizzicato going on in the double bass right here, an octave lower. So yeah, it just may end up being a little wolfish of a texture behind the timpani, as opposed to just like a single bassoon, which might end up coloring the sound of the tuba, which in turn colors the sound of the timpani. Okay. Now I'm noticing that you have these pickup notes, right, which kind of serve a little bit of a function in terms of like resolving notes, right? So da 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 dun dun dun, and then da 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 dun dun dun. So I would caution with that is just like once again directing the attention of the listener, like to say, hey, here is it's almost like hey, here is the melody, right? So how much training wheels do you want on your thematic content to direct people's attention to things, right? So if Lili didn't put it in, I would say maybe she had a good reason. And then here we're just, da, dum. So do you really want da in the flutes and da, da in the clarinets, right? Do you want to articulate or not? Okay, so I would say choose one. Don't have both. Now, ba. Do we want ba, or do we want da da da, or da da, or da da da, right? Or do we just want no slurs at all? Da 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 da, just a very direct sound, right, to match what's going on in the tremolo here. Now, here I would say, if you really want to balance, like once again, it's perfectly fine for the strings to be forte, right? Because everybody's going down to piano. Give us a destination here, or else the brass may just go down to like mezzo piano, right? Go down to, I would say, take it down to pianissimo, right? Just put a destination dynamic at the end of the hairpins, right? And then I think you'll get the right color, the color that you want there. But the way that it is now, with the last thing that we heard about in terms of dynamics was mezzo forte, right? So assuming that they'll continue on in mezzo forte, you get a very kind of brassy sound with a tiny little bit of tremolo behind it, the way that this is scored. I mean, especially with trumpets up there on a high F sharp, right? That'll really, so I'd say forte strings, forte bassoon, right? And just have this like continue on, make sure that this is a single bassoon, right? Don't go a duet here. Okay. Now really soft, and then then like a little bit of icing here in the end from the harp. Okay, now bum 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 bum, and okay, so I'll just say I approve of bird-like sounds and scores, right? So just the question is, how much does it distract from the arc of the melody, right? So I would say if the scoring follows the line of the melody, as it does here, right? You've got F sharps, Ds, right, Bs, ending on an F sharp. And by the way, this is totally fine. For people who've been following my ongoing rants about scoring flute too low, this is fine because it is just going down. It is like the direction is just going down to the these lower notes with a lighter accompaniment. So it's all fine. So in this case, the line of the melody is it's sort of it is, you're in essence it is stating the melody, but just in a very baroque way, right? Or even more than baroque, rococo, in a very rococo way. Okay, now here, like, we've got more flurries, very loud flurries, by the way, and they are really distracting the listener's attention away from the actual melody, right? This beautiful arc that Lili has crafted, and your own scoring of it, right? So what are people going to pay attention to? Are they going to pay attention to the lovely architecture that you've got here, or just this one little, this one little filigree on top? So I would say, I'm not going to say, good, bad, keep, just get rid of, but I just want you to think about, the consequences of that decision of ornamenting, things in a way that hides the architecture, right? So even in the best of Rococo, architecture, the lines of the building are still very clear, and actually even more simple than they were in the Baroque era, right? Like the Baroque era is all about, things being intellectually integrated and complex, and the Rococo period was about, pre-classical, like it was like thinking towards the simplicity and the elegance of the classical period. But sort of crenulating and decorating things so that you thought that it was still Baroque, right? So and that's true in music too, right? So like I mean, especially in like Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, and yeah, I mean like his structures are so simple, but his language is so ornate, right? Okay, so just watch out. Okay, make the that would really be my only comment there. But like, see, like as far as the scoring is concerned, it's great. Like, pizzicato, pluck, 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 and then you just don't even bother making these into long pizzicatos. Great, right? What's the need for like scoring really long pizzicato time values when it's just going to dissipate almost instantly, except for maybe like lower open strings on the cello or double bass fingered notes and open notes. And in those cases, like those are sort of special cases. But even with that, a loud pizzicato on double bass with fairly little to cloud it above will actually use the hall just the same way that a timpani stroke does, right? In just using the resonance to sustain the sound. Okay, so da da so da 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 bum 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 bum. This is another clever thing. You are like you are just accepting that adding this much brass is going to kill your strings anyway, so you don't bother scoring them. So that is a cool. I'm noticing that as a trait. And why should the strings even bother playing, right? If the texture is going to be so fat. Now, in order for this to really work, I would say you just really can't pull your punches with the brass. You don't want to just like have the brass only go up to mezzo forte so they don't drown out the strings here, right? Because you really want that color. You want that forte color. And honestly speaking, going up to an A sharp on horns, that better be forte. A sharp accent, that is going to be forte. So your poor violins here, they better be marked fortissimo. Okay? Yeah, so just go up to a fortissimo here, and then you will be able to balance this. Everything else about it is great. Okay? And like, yeah, you are taking into account the fact that if everybody is kind of going for this big chorale approach, then it's better to have your horns bunched together. I think that you could still compete even just like with doubled horns rather than quadrupled horns here. But the quadrupled horns are going to the overtones from the quadrupled horns, if they really get going, are just going to slam this twittering up here anyways, right? So if you must keep it, bring it down a little bit in volume and just let it be a background element. And otherwise I would just say that, like, yeah, it's starting to distract a little bit, right? Like let the ideas speak the strongest from the original score, and try not to distract from it, only complement it, right? So this is a complement, right? Not compliment like, but complement with an E, right? And this is potentially a distraction, right? Because the other thing too is, it interrupts the line, right? So like coming off of this, da 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 da, right? It's hard for the ear to kind of connect, right? If the ear is focusing on this and then this comes in, like that wonderful sense of connection in the melodic phrasing doesn't come through either, right? Okay, so this is a really nice trade-off here, or handoff, I should say. It's not a trade-off. A nice handoff here to the middle winds, and then going straight into the strings, which pick up. It's a really nice dovetailing. I think that's just really excellent scoring right in there. I would say that the strings should start in a little stronger, because like you're going forte diminuendo to what, right? To piano. Like they might just, your winds might just go forte diminuendo to mezzo forte, right? So I would say forte diminuendo, tell us where you're going to. So like if you're going to pianissimo or whatever, or piano, so forte diminuendo, let's say it's to piano. So forte diminuendo to piano, and here I would say mezzo forte, start in on a mezzo forte, and then pick up at piano in this bar, and then pushing in, right? So these elements dovetail a little bit more seamlessly. All right. Yeah, and right in here, the harp will have to be much stronger, right? Even with just all strings, this should be like, I would say already just go straight to mezzo forte, and this should be forte accent, right? And when you've got I would just say like, try to keep your harp dynamics, in between the staves as much as possible. Okay. Now, here's a little trick with Sibelius, and that is, in order for, this is something you probably already know, in order for both staves of a piano part or a harp part to activate, like to have the same dynamic level, it is necessary for the dynamic markings to be all voices, right? So just really, when you are scoring harp music and piano music, try to have a default that all of your global dynamics, in other words, dynamics that are intended for all parts, are marked as all in Sibelius. All right, it's just a really good habit to take. And like you could actually just, speaking of global, you could just do this kind of thing. Select everything, and then, where's that keypad? And then just go Shift Option or Shift Alt D, right? Just selecting all of the dynamics. And this, for some reason, this is interpreted as a dynamic. So let's take that off. Okay, and you notice that some of them are already global, right? And that's probably because you selected a passage and then typed H or Shift H. So at this point, once again, handy dandy keypad, mark them all, right? And when you are not able to put your hairpins in the middle of of something like this, yeah, it's perfectly fine to have it below the phrase like that. Okay, but like when you have just in one hand, this is a little unfair because the original score may have just been had a single staff, as the as things were presented in a vertical page format. So not beating up on you unnecessarily, I hope, JJ. All right, so moving on. This is all great. Da 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 da. Sorry for my tuneless singing. I really like this combination. And then little resolution in the horns with pizzicato in the basses. Yeah, sort of little. There's a bit of a collision right in here. A little bit of a car crash. Okay, now, so my comment here is that I feel this should be grace notes rather than 16th notes, because I feel that it interferes a little bit with the with the resolution, da da ba ba bum. It just, with the pizzicato already happening, right? It's because of the pizzicato, bum 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 da da dum. I just feel that interferes a little bit with the natural flow right there. So I think that like if you just made them into grace notes, to tighten the rhythm a little bit and make it less measured, right? Okay, so moving on to the restatement. We've got a very nice combination right in here, leaving out the violas. They're not really needed with so much horn in the middle. So bum 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 bum, really simple solo flute, English horn, and combined together. And once again, that might actually be really obvious to your string player. Don't tell them how to do this. Just make sure that if that's what you want, that the bowing is consistent, right? They will know what to do. Right. Now, just the next question is just whether or not you want articulation in your winds on the downbeat of the next bar. Do you want your strings to be going, up, down, and your flute just to go da, or do you want da, tongue, right? And even the same thing with your, do you want legato change of harmony in there, or do you want to push on the downbeat? Yeah, and just very simple, direct percussion right in there, bass drum and timpani. You almost don't even need bass drum in there, but it's fine. Okay, and then just basically climbing up in octaves, and I really like the way that you pull back there, and let the harp and celesta really make the take over on the precise melodic statement right in there. I think that that's very wise. However, what may not work so well is such powerful violin writing against your celesta and harp, which after all are kind of mezzo piano instruments, right? I mean, the strongest you will ever hear a harp, in compared to the orchestral dynamic is mezzo forte, and that is just really like slapping those strings. And of course, as we mentioned before, the loudest you will really ever hear a celesta play in terms of orchestral dynamics is mezzo piano. I mean, as I've said a few times now, it's kind of like a baby instrument, right? It's kind of like the baby amongst all the adults. So the adults have got to really pussyfoot here. If you really want this to be all about the celesta and the harp, everybody has got to shut the hell up. Okay? So, what you're doing here in your scoring is great, right? But what if everybody is just really way softer, right? So I would say just, if you want the celesta to play an important part there, you cannot go any louder than mezzo forte, or even like mezzo piano, maybe even. Like maybe you could have your horns go up to piano, and then your winds and strings go up to mezzo piano or mezzo forte, right? And then just have these players play as loud as they can, right? Not that the celesta can play all that loud, but it's forte, right? And then just draw everything in. And as I said before, it might be a bit much to have two upsweeps in a row on piccolo up to F sharp. Now I've mentioned before in a few other places about very, very high notes on piccolo not really being piano in the way that we understand piano, right? I mean, we're already pushing some very, very high notes, and in the flute, and assuming that they will go down to piano as well, like this high G sharp. And that is sort of manageable, pretty manageable. It's not the same, it doesn't have that really delicate, super controlled dynamic that, even just one or two pitches down on the flute, right? But it's still all right. You can still, but like, will that be really soft, right? It has a tendency to really speak up there, just like have a very clear, very, very enunciated kind of a dynamic. So, what I've suggested in a couple other scores lately is that this note could be played as just as an artificial harmonic in the violins very easily, and then the piccolo could be playing a lower pitch, and you could just capitalize on its if it played an octave lower, you could capitalize on its overtones, right? Because you're already getting that, that high F sharp here in the celesta and the harp and the glockenspiel, right? So you've got enough power on that note without bringing in the very strong, very cutting sound of the piccolo, even at a soft, right? Like the character of that sound to be almost percussive is still there, right? It doesn't go away. It still has that kind of slightly whistling kind of edge to it. Okay, now going on, we have this lovely section, final section, and I feel that it's really beautifully scored. Okay, I'm gonna probably, having said that, you might think, oh well, now Thomas is chopping into bits now that he is, you might think, oh, Thomas praises things and then he like really critiques them. Well, but I mean, isn't that what you want, right? Just anybody who has felt that maybe I critiqued a little too much, or maybe that like I'm not being consistent about saying that something is great and then taking it to bits. Well, look, if you've seen my lectures on standard orchestral repertoire, I often question whether or not certain effects will work, and I often point out where they don't, and there are workarounds, right? So, I even critique myself when I'm analyzing my own orchestration in these orchestration lessons that start off these evaluations, where I supply my own orchestration and then talk about it. Okay, so everything needs to be analyzed and thought over, and it's not like you have to justify everything you've ever done, but it always helps to think about something and to to know that you're coming to the strongest solution. All right, so having said that, let's just look at the orchestration for this, and then I'm going to go have breakfast. So da 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 da. So we got just a beautiful octave here using all the strings. It's nice, and then you just pull it off quickly, right? And that is being doubled by bassoons and trumpets. Yeah, and here I would just say like really control your brass, right? So P dolce, I would say, like even pianissimo wouldn't be a bad idea if you want a truly blended sound here. This can stay piano though. Okay, so da da, and this is really lovely. All of this stuff, this beautiful glittering. I as an occasional orchestral pianist, having done one or two things, usually readings. I think my own work and then another work, and then I also did some celesta playing for a concert that I actually scored for some youth groups and orchestra and a youth orchestra. So having done some celesta playing, I would say that I would kind of want things written out for two hands wherever possible. Now octaves, of course, that could just be one hand, but here, like if there's a way of interpreting this across two hands, I think it would just be way more readable. Okay, but yeah, it's all beautiful, this kind of glittering, and also notice like it's it feels indeterminate because everybody is in a different subdivision, right? Triplets versus sixteenths versus quintuplets. That's really, really nice. Okay, so and then that's just supported by very simple flute, oboes, clarinets. Really, really nice scoring. Okay, and then we're adding a little bit of beef here, right? So here the trumpets really start to put in an edge, and this is why I feel like even more so that the trumpet should be backgroundish. If you want that kind of trumpety support, if you want that kind of edge, that really incredibly warm edge, almost like super oboes supporting your upper strings, then yeah, just really make them soft so that they blend well. Okay, and then stronger, that's fine with harmony coming from the bassoons and horns. That all works good. There might be a little bit, might be a little early to bring in the bass trombone here. All right, but I don't know, like you kind of make your apex, like there's a certain apex of excitement right in here, and then you let go. So maybe it's not so bad, but maybe just looking at the overall arc though, maybe it is a little early. Okay, and then your reaction is tremolo strings and just doubled with your wind section, and that's all cool. And this is lovely too, the way that you just bring in you just drop the harmonic roll and have the bassoons jump in. Okay, and then once again, I think that this might also work better as grace notes, ba-da-dum, right, as rather than ba-ba-bum. Right? Okay, and then a nice big thump on your bass drum. And string octaves quite a bit higher with a little bit of trumpet, and this is great because even more excitement, right? I would almost mark like F molto here for your strings, so not quite fortissimo, but just really having an edge to the sound, damn it, so forte is like strong, and molto forte is damn it. It's like emphasizing the fact that you're loud. Okay, so that's what molto forte is. Okay, and then fortissimo is like yelling, and then triple F is screaming, and then quadruple F is as loud as you can play to the point at which there's like no more music left in it. It's just sawing away and being loud and like not even caring about the music. That's how I would define the different degrees of loudness, which sort of makes mezzo forte make sense in this role as being like more of a supporting, blending, or on its way to somewhere else kind of dynamic. But it's really well done right in here. Okay, and this is great. Just having some glockenspiel plus high winds. And then it doesn't really matter too much about the tone color and anything unusual or different about this because of the big build underneath it. So that's really well done. And then boom, right? Just a big solid thump. And the harp here is just completely, nobody's going to hear that. If you need some kind of a plucked sound, and the other thing too is that the sustain will not last that long either. So I would say if you want a big kind of plucked sound, you should do marcato octaves in bassoon and contrabassoon and accented pizzicato in your lower strings, doubling those same pitches, right? And you'll get maybe what you would have gotten with harp here, but the harp is nobody's gonna hear it. Okay, and then and this is really nice that you combine the functions together of the melody and the reaction all in one. But look, you made a decision here to not add the last note of the phrase, and you really do need it because, like, I mean, I was listening for it and I didn't feel it, and I didn't because like it is a handoff. Now, see here, this is a good way of using handoff. The last note of the phrase is handing off the music to the next phrase, right? So if you take that away, there's kind of an unnatural cessation of thematic motion, right? Which I feel it just doesn't feel right, especially in the context of the work. You know, assume that instead of this work being something that I discovered, or that, you know, is just sort of obscure right now in terms of the standard repertoire for piano, assume that this was a piece that was as well known as, you know, a major work of, like, say, Debussy or Ravel, where, you know, just pretty much the music was you know, every note was pretty well known as a piano piece to an audience, right? Would you want to leave out that last note, right? So just imagine, right, rather than we're adapting material that we have more leeway because it's a lesser known piece, right? So I would say in this case, just pretend everybody's heard you know, D'un Jardin, Clair a million times in the classical world. So that just sort of puts it into reference that you really do need to hand things off. And, you know, you could, you know, bum 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 bum, then put in a pausa, just a little lift. Boom, da 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 da, and this is all, you know, really nice. There's a slight change. You know, you go da 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 da, and then you go done at the end. So was that possibly a mistake or reinterpretation, or I don't know if it really adds too much to you know, to go back to that place, you know, to return to the C sharp. But yeah, this is all great. The, you know, very, very delicate scoring, so it'll be really easy to hear the harp harmonics here, and you know, you just keep everything incredibly simple. I really, really like that. Just strings, the way that you got everything laid out here. There's no need to have artificial harmonics, and, you know, and non-vibrato. That's great. That's something I did as well. And, you know, it just is kind of a serene floating sound. And yeah, and then we just have our little plucks, right? So yeah, so really great. You know, I spent a little extra time on this. It's been a little arbitrary about, you know, some scores getting more attention or less attention. Actually, my feeling is that they all get the same amount of attention, whether I'm able to say what I need to say in, you know, 35 minutes or 45 minutes, or in this case, I guess, over 50 minutes. So, you know, just the important thing is that I touch on the things that will make the score stronger, right? So, anyways, JJ, I hope that was useful. If it wasn't, or if you didn't agree with everything I said, there's no reason to go over every point and that where you didn't agree and say, well, I did this because of such and such. Don't even worry about it. Just take what is useful and discard the rest, okay? You know, it's like, you know, you have already proved yourself in this effort. You do not need to explain yourself or justify anything, okay? And that is true for everybody, right? There's no need to revisit anything and, you know, and add a bunch of comments that, like, say, well, I don't agree with your, you know, with this because XYZ. Don't worry about it. You know, just move on to the next thing. It's not worth your time to you know, to rehash it. And of course, like with 146 entries, there's no possible way I can go back and say, well, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong, and let's look at it again. I don't have time to do that because I've got to get on to the next thing, and I will probably have some other stuff coming up that I have to, you know, educational content to prepare for the community and gigs and so on as the performing world opens up again down here in Australasia. So thank you, JJ. Thanks for sitting through all of that. Thank you for your excellent entry and your presence in the community. It's just, you know, that it's sort of like an ongoing conversation between us and within the community. and for keeping things strong, for carrying on some of the work that I and other channels started with your own channel and your own thoughts. And you have either just recently graduated or are about to graduate from university, and you are already taking over the role of an educator, and you know what you're talking about. That is the important thing. You know it very well, and that's very well taken. So, and on top of that, you're supporting my channel, which is fantastic. So look, thank you for everything, seriously. And we'll be in touch, and I will very happily and very charged from this evaluation go on to the next evaluation for today.